You know, a lot of times they will have an agenda, what we think is going to make our life better. And that agenda creates a box. And when we
Hmm.
stay inside that box, we will feel a certain amount of happiness because we feel in control. But it's very box dependent. So life throws us a curve, and now we're not happy. And any happiness that's associated with me getting what I think I want is a very fragile happiness.
Yes.
So the happiness that for me feels so much more authentic and enduring is a openness to the unknown. It's a welcoming of not knowing. It's a welcoming of uncertainty. It's a welcoming of not necessarily having a definite plan or a definite knowing of what's supposed to happen.
Digital audio health by Simatrax.
Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. Good to see you, Rhonda.
Nice to see you too. And it's nice that we have an acquaintance that we both know that connected us. I really like that. I like when there's a connection like that. Let the audience know a little bit about your journey before we start talking about your transition.
Sure. So I started working as a chemical engineer and learned about enlightenment. And then in 2009, all seeking stopped because I had
Mm,
a shift of identity. And then the next many years have been understanding how that plays out in regular life. And so I've written two books about that process. And I coach people who are also on similar paths.
hmm. And what happened that you ended up shifting identity?
So I was at a meditation retreat, hoping to
Hmm.
be enlightened. And I realized halfway through the retreat that my hoping for something was pulling me out of my experience.
Hmm.
And I thought, I'm going to waste this whole retreat wishing for something instead of being here. So I completely let go of any desire for anything else than what was here. And
Hmm.
the next morning I woke up and the thoughts that usually create a sense of a personal self were totally gone. I could even see how my brain used to work so hard creating all these thoughts. And without them, I just saw life as this continual flow, that there's just one initiatory movement that's expressing through all of us. So that stayed like that for a couple of weeks. And then when the thoughts came back, I knew, well, there's just this one movement. It must be interested in these thoughts. Let's explore them with curiosity and see why.
Hmm. And so what did you do?
So I started this process of inquiry. I
Right.
know that this thing that we are, this single flow of life, this movement,
Hmm.
is at the root of everything that happens. So even if I get angry or sad or anything like that, I can look and see what might be interested about the experience I'm having.
Yes.
And I find that it's always turned out to be good. When I let go of self-protection, I just find that every experience is good. And
Hmm.
then the emotions about it have shifted, and the values I use in my life have shifted. And I just see that not only is everything that's happening fundamentally good, but my existence and your existence is the universe throwing a party for itself.
Hmm. Yeah, because we have an exchange with the universe, don't we, on a daily basis, if we want to recognize it or if we can recognize it. I'm so curious about this. So, you're working as a chemical engineer. and you have this enlightenment at a workshop, at a meditation workshop.
Right. To the meditation.
And yeah, and sometimes people say, what, so is it in the meditation that you started to have a clearness in yourself, your being, and that you just wanted to stay there?
I had been practicing meditation for a couple years, and
Okay.
I was very aware that
Mhm,
there's this beingness, this awareness,
mhm.
this fundamental thing that, is more real even than my body. You know,
Yes.
we can feel that. You can feel that,
Mhm,
right? You know that. So that essence was the focus of my meditation. I was simply resting as being this living awareness or this alive space. And as I rested in that, I could easily experience peace and a sense of expansion and
mhm.
calmness. But then I'd go into my regular life, and it was this, you know, okay, now I'm upset, and now somebody did something, and I'm scared they're going to criticize me, or
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
scared I'm not going to be good enough. And so when I realized there really is nothing but these thoughts running that experience of being
Yeah.
criticized. Without the thoughts of an individual Lisa, there's just somebody saying words.
Mhm.
And the words express the energy going through them at that moment. And my body might vibrate with that energy, and I might feel the fear they're having or the control they're trying to exert. I might
Mhm.
feel that in my body. So I'm not
Yeah.
denying there's very physical experience.
Oh, yes.
But that physical experience is simply that. It's a bunch of sensations. And it's my thoughts that turn it into I'm threatened.
Yeah.
My future's in danger. My life is going to be limited.
Mm.
All those thoughts are the thing that creates the sense that, oh, I'm alone and I need help and I need understanding. And, it turns out everything I need is provided by life to me every moment.
Yes.
It's such
Mhm.
relief to not need anything anymore.
Yes. And they refer to it as the monkey brain, and I say the roommate in your head that keeps chattering away. And I have found that meditation has silenced that. And then so once you were clearer about, and you were able to distinguish the difference between how you were and how you were becoming, did your journey change? Did you continue to work as a chemical engineer, or did you change what you were doing?
Yeah, I changed. I can manage to stay working.
Yes.
Um, and at that point, it just things opened up where I was able to leave the corporate world,
Mhm.
and I lived a life that I never would have thought, it didn't enhance my personal reputation anymore. I lived with some boyfriends. I took a lot of courses. I
Mhm.
ended up teaching some retreats, but it was always this exploration of, so why do I sometimes still feel hurt and angry? And
Mhm.
how can I find the habitual instincts in me that are running and, gently, peel them back, understand
Mhm.
them, bring love to them, and allow them to feel the fullness of this love that we are. So yes, I left that, and it was, um, my gosh, I went back to school ultimately to study ultrasound, and that happened about 5 years later or so.
Mhm.
And that was
So,
also a big surprise because
yes.
it became clear that I needed to actually have a real job at some point. That became clear. And I put out this request, show me.
Mhm.
And a year later, as I was just walking down the street, it popped into my head. And what happened was this big yes through my whole body, like, oh, that would be fun. That
Yeah.
would not be stressful. It wouldn't detract from all this other stuff that I like to do.
Mhm.
And that's something that has really become a hallmark for me, is feeling that just yes through my whole being, where there's not all this hemming and hawing.
Yeah. And so you said you put out a request, and I would think that the listeners are wondering, who did you put the request out to?
Right. Yes.
I know who you put the request to.
Yes. It was an intention
Mhm.
into this vast energy field that we are, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't feel this to be something like a person, it's bigger than a person. It's not less, it's not more austere or more silent. It's
Mhm.
much more intimate, but
Mhm.
it doesn't take offense, it doesn't have agenda. But it's really alive and feeling everything, and so much
Mhm.
bigger than a persona could be.
Mhm. So it's an energy. You put it out to the energy field. Mhm.
Yes,
So
yes.
when the yes came to you, and my curiosity will be also the audience curiosity, is they want to know how you did that. Where did the yes come from? Did it come from an intuition, or did it come from your higher source, your higher being?
By living in this process of inquiry, so when I'm
Yes.
feeling upset, I am living in a manufactured idea of myself. You know,
Yes.
this that we are never is offended. It's never hurt. It can't be
Mhm.
harmed. So if I think I'm being harmed, it's my idea of myself that's being harmed.
Mhm.
My idea of my reputation, my idea of how safe my life needs to be, my idea of my security, all those things, they aren't me. So
Mhm.
by constantly questioning those, they've become so thin. They're just like this paper thing that kind of flips around.
Mhm.
So happiness at that level just doesn't feel that rewarding, that deep. So any idea that would come at that level wouldn't have the same deep penetration.
Mhm.
So because I've been doing that, instead, what I feel mostly is this energy flowing through me. And when that energy is flowing without hindrance, I'm
Mhm.
not trying to squeeze it into any particular form,
Mhm.
then there's this open vitality.
Mhm.
And so a yes that makes that open vitality just feel bigger, then I know this is in congruence with this energy field that we are.
Mhm. Yes. And so are you, happiness, people are looking for happiness. We book a trip, and as soon as we get it booked, we're happy because we're going on a trip, and we think about it and dream about it and pack and unpack and repack. And then our suitcase is lost when we get there. But but the thing is, that is a type of happiness. When you're at the level that you're at, it's a different type of happiness. It's a calm, maybe describe that to the audience. It's a calm, accepting, and perhaps not even goal oriented anymore. Can you talk about that? Can you speak about that?
Yes. Oh, that is such a great question. And clearly you have a lot of wisdom in that area, a lot of experience. You know, a lot of times they will have an agenda of what we think is going to make our life better. And that agenda creates a box. And when
Mhm.
we stay inside that box, we will feel a certain amount of happiness because we feel in control. But it's very box dependent. So life throws us a curve, and now we're not happy. And any happiness that's associated with me getting what I think I want is a very fragile happiness.
Yes.
So the happiness that for me feels so much more authentic and enduring is a openness to the unknown. It's a welcoming of not knowing. It's a welcoming of uncertainty. It's a welcoming of not necessarily having definite plan or definite knowing of what's supposed to happen. But instead, it's this sense that life is flowing through me and I'm not standing in its way. And that life is trusted, can be trusted. And I actually think to relax into opening like that, it's actually a practice, because
Mhm.
especially given how some of us experienced our childhoods, we will lots of times have a lot of anxiety that we tense up when we're noticing that we've gotten into the unknown.
Mhm.
But so some of the practices that help just allowing that letting go become more second nature is practicing gratitude and starting the day with an intention for a joyful day and doing loving things to people without them knowing it. Because as we let love just flow through us, we notice, oh my gosh, that's actually my essence. I don't have to make that happen. Maybe that's life's essence too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And lots of times when we start on a trip, we actually don't know how it's going to turn out. And we are in that curious state. So that not knowing is why sometimes it's easier to be happy going on a trip than when we're at home where we think we know everything.
Mhm.
But then, our habits can be to lapse back into our plans. And there's nothing wrong with having intentions, and there's nothing wrong with trying to be in your plan. It's just
Yeah.
if you want to be tapped into this greater unknown, then the intimacy with the fact that I don't know what's happening
Mhm.
creates this expansive potential that feels so alive and ultimately so nourishing.
Mhm. Well, I think that, I think about my own life and I think about the certainty that I looked for in certain aspects of my life. And we all want certainty until we get bored, and then we want some uncertainty. And as soon as the uncertainty's taken way too long, we want the certainty back. And so we're not really talking about that type of stuff. We're talking about graduating from that type of existence to really co-creating with the universal energy that's flowing through us, because now we're paying attention at a level that we've never paid attention to before. And so I really appreciate that you're sharing at such a level. It's wonderful. And a lot of people, I think, and I know myself that I spend a lot of my life really not being thankful for what I have right now. We're always seem to be going for that extra, that extra income, that bigger house, that better vehicle. And so talk to us about a little bit more about how people can practice gratitude and what the benefits of that really is, instead of always searching and always wanting more, bigger, better now, right now.
Yes. Oh, wow. My experience is, we start with the obvious things that start that habit. I want better grades, or I want a better relationship, or I want more money. And then we might graduate to, I want to be a kinder person, and I want to have more fulfillment, and and while all of that is great, eventually for me, it just came to an end
Yes.
because the wanting becomes addicted to wanting. And instead, it turns out that what I am is what I've been wanting. And that happens as I feel that flow of life through me that I can't stop. I may do something and be focused somewhere else, but the moment I start to look, it's always already there.
Mhm.
The more I got familiar and spent time just marinating in this juiciness, it
Mhm.
became obvious that this is the source of fulfillment and everything else is just a fun addition. And then, yeah, sure, I may be doing a lot of things in my life, or I may be doing very little. But either way, they're just expressions flowing out of this joy rather than seeking the joy. that changes everything. I started a
Mhm.
YouTube channel, and I don't look to see how many likes I've gotten. I actually have to set up a meeting with somebody who will tell me, because I just don't even think about it. I'm doing it because I think it's so fun. It is
Mhm.
good to get some feedback, and I think that's a helpful thing. So, but my instinct is I'm just doing it for the fun of it.
Mhm. And letting go of the outcome,
Right.
right? Because being attached to outcomes often is a remedy for disappointment. And
Yes.
when we do the best we can, and especially when we feel that we're on our soul's journey, we do let go of the outcome, because whatever the outcome is what it is supposed to be. And but I think that it's hard to let go of the control,
Right.
right? That we have or think that we have in our life. And so this was a meditation retreat that you went to that changed everything for you. Some people have accidents, and if the accident's not big enough, then something else happens until they finally come to a screeching halt. And that's when the awakening starts happening. So when that happened to you, I just want to go back there to that time. Did you understand what was happening when you got home from the retreat, and you had a different feeling about everything?
Well, I had heard of these kinds of things happening, but
Okay.
I definitely was completely surprised. I mean, when I went to drive home from the retreat, I thought, I don't know if I can still drive a car.
Oh, I
No.
know. And sometimes you shouldn't,
Right.
you know.
Yes. And when I watched movies, they didn't make any sense. It was like, so we're in this flow of life, and people are adding all these painful meanings to this flow. Like, why are they doing that? I can understand. And then you watch movies about people making up bad stories for their lives. It just didn't make any sense to me. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was, and I had a coaching session, and this woman came, and she was looking for advice, and I had nothing to say. I was just like, I couldn't see how her life had any problems. And
Mm.
that's when I realized, okay, this is not helping people. I need to, something needs to kind of integrate back. Like
Mhm.
it was like this little, and it wasn't really this local thing that did that. It was like the energy saying, okay, yeah, now we're gonna move into a different stage. A-
Mhm.
and at that point, it was interesting. Fortunately, I already had a habit in my life, which was if I was in a situation that I didn't like, rather
Mhm.
than trying to fix it, I tried to learn everything I could, because I know if you don't learn anything, don't finish your learning in this situation, you're going to repeat it. So if
Yes.
I want to finish a situation, I just get really intense in learning everything about it. And then it will just naturally change on its own. It's amazing. Once we don't have anything to learn anymore in a situation, somehow it always changes. So
Mhm.
I already had that habit. And so as life started to come back in a little bit more normal perception, it was that same type of instinct. Oh, what's curious, what's interesting, what is there to learn about feeling angry and getting to be forgiven and running late and all of those things.
Mhm.
Like there was this simple situation. I was leaving my boyfriend's apartment, and he asked me to help him. And I really wanted to get to where I was going to get a good seat, but I couldn't turn him down. I mean, I love him, and
Mhm.
I stopped to help him, and I knew I might be giving up my good seat. And as I was leaving the apartment, the thoughts start going, now, Lisa, you gave up your good seat. You gave up your good seat.
Yeah.
So immediately the questioning came in, wait a minute, that you stopped to help him, that apparently is what life really wanted. So what is there to love in this situation where you might not get your good seat? And immediately I just saw, it's those little loving moments all day long
Yeah.
that is what makes life sweet. And I realized life was making sure that I was living a sweet life. And that moment was an essential part of that, rather than whatever seat I got.
Mhm. Wonderful. And for the lessons that you've learned, if you don't learn them the first time it comes around, do you find that the universe has a way of presenting that situation to you again to see if you'll get it this time around? Like if you had an example of that.
Oh, yeah, sure. In fact, there's a relationship I had, and I'm the kind of person when I end something, it's over. I've never really considered going back to somebody that I had broken up with, except for in one situation. When our relationship ended, I hadn't learned everything.
Mhm.
I don't know, I could just tell that. And so he came back into my life. And sometimes it's not the exact same person, it's just someone similar. But in this
Oh,
case, it's
yes.
actually the
It was
same person.
in person.
And so this time I at first, we had the sweet reunion part, and then the dynamics started showing up again. And it was for me, I was experiencing that he needed something that I just couldn't give to him. It was some kind of emotional certainty. And I was telling him I loved him. I wanted to spend time with him, even more than he wanted to spend with me. But then whatever would happen, he would accuse me that I hadn't loved him well. And so I couldn't understand that. But all my initial response was this defensiveness, rehearsed in my mind all the ways I had loved him enough. But the defensiveness was getting us nowhere, not
No.
at all. So finally, I thought, okay, what is there to learn here? So I spent a lot of time just looking and investigating. Is there any area where I'm not loving towards him? And really getting very clear. So I made a couple small adjustments. But basically, then I was truly able to say, okay, I know that I'm loving towards him. So the defensiveness fell away. And instead,
Okay.
I just became very curious about him. Why was he experiencing something as not loving?
Yes.
So I started asking him and really getting into his head. What was it? It would be I was paying for something, and then he would have misgivings over whether or not I should pay for it. And then he would accuse me later that, why did I pay for that? Just it was weird things. So
Mhm.
I really got into his head about what he was thinking. And I started to realize that he had some kind of a seed of feeling unloved.
Mhm.
It was torturing him.
Wow.
And when I got that, I just felt so much compassion.
Mhm.
And so my responses to him totally changed. All I could say was, I'm so sorry you feel that way. And I
Mhm.
love you. Is there anything I can do for you right now? And I couldn't recreate his stories for him, but I just showed a blanketing of love over this torturing thought process he had.
Mhm.
And so I no longer felt any defensiveness. And it just
Yes.
became this caring that just kept flowing out of me, flowing out of me. And then I could see that I never was going to be able to heal it for him.
Mhm.
It wasn't, he had a few glimpses, like he recorded a couple conversations, looked at them later. And when he listened, he was like, wow, I remember it totally different.
Yes.
So he saw what was happening in his head. And he was doing some counseling, but he really didn't like that process. So I just kept loving him and seeing that, what I was doing was not helping him. I was going to end
Mhm.
up needing something else. And then the day came when he broke up with me. It just seemed right. Clearly someone else was going to help him get through this. But
Mhm.
I felt so clear and so clean when that happened.
Mhm. Well, and I think a lot of breakups has to do with not understanding the person or misunderstanding the other person. Because, we really bring a lot of baggage into a situation, you
Yes.
know.
Yes. My defensiveness was
And
definitely a lot through.
And people get into big, big trouble by mind reading, thinking it's the way it is when it really and clearly may not even be like that at all. And so I'm really glad that you shared that, because sometimes people who go from relationship to relationship, they're more advanced than the person that they're with. And it's just not, the energy is not there, or it's misunderstanding of people's demeanor. And what I could never get if when one of the couples would be angry, then the other person would get angry, which makes no sense at all. The stuff like that doesn't make sense to me. But that's really good that you came. And I mean, that is a huge lesson for our audience. You've talked about it, the kindness and the compassion that you had towards him, even though he was making something beautiful that you had done turn sort of in the ugly side of things. He was starting to having a grudge about that you paid for something or whatever. And I think that it really is good teachings for people who are listening. Do you have any other examples that you can give us that you've had in your life where when you changed how you were, people around you changed?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before I left the corporate world, so I could feel that this was going to be ending. But
Yes.
again, I just looked at, okay, but right now I'm still here. I don't have a clarity about what's next. So I just dug in to the situation. And at that time, I had a whole different realm of life I wanted to do other than chemical engineering and product
Mm-hmm.
management. But I looked in my company and I realized that there was the situation that I felt was most interesting was that the different departments were not working well together. They were working on different sets of priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So engineering and research and development and marketing would not be focused on this getting the same thing done. So we were constantly at odds with one another. So I thought, well, that's what interests me. So I started having these meetings. I got the directors together and I got even some vice presidents listing out what their priorities were. And
Mm-hmm.
when it became obvious at that level what was happening, then there were the discussions needed to bring it back in alignment. And suddenly I liked going to work every morning
There you
because
go.
I brought in what was interesting to me. So I didn't realize, but the reason I didn't like my job was because I was boxing myself into the role I thought I was supposed to have instead of just letting the fullness of myself be expressed.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's easy to go into a spiral going down when you're not happy with your job, and that's what you focus on. You don't focus on how can I make it better? How can I make the situation better? Because I mean, with most companies, departments usually don't get along, and it's usually top down. And so that's incredible that you had such insight so quickly after your transformation. But transformations, they don't really care if you're ready for it or not, do they?
Well, our little me will never feel ready.
Yeah.
That's just our identity is built upon living in our definitions. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in fact, I think it's helpful for me, anyways, to be comfortable being uncomfortable because it is the little me that can get uncomfortable.
Oh,
So
yes.
when it's uncomfortable, I say high five, you
Mm.
know, very good. This is where we want to be in the not comfortable space. And then I can just hold in compassion whatever part of me is feeling like it's pushed to an edge. And that living on the edge, that's where growth happens. That's where miracles happen. That's where life flows most freely.
Yeah.
So it turns out, yeah, right now I just got exposed to this energy system that we've decided we want to bring to our town. And I never planned to own a business. That just was not on my list. But once we experienced it, and it's 2.5 hours from us, or heard about it even. I
Mhm.
wanted to have it in our town. And again, that whole thing, my whole body just felt alive. This is it.
Yes.
This is the right thing. And here we are going down the path of opening a business, which is giving me tons of opportunities to see any remaining parts that want to feel safe and
Right.
let them go.
And what is it? What does it have to do with the energy?
It's called the energy enhancement system, and it's you go into a room that has a bunch of devices either around the ceiling or in the corners, and
Mhm.
together they make a field. And the field does things on the spiritual level. It's
Mhm.
amazing. You just feel very open and expansive. It does stuff on the emotional level. People lose any anxiety, feel much more open-hearted. They'll cry more easily. And
Mhm.
it does things on the physical level, like the telomeres at the end of your DNA get lengthened,
Yes.
and your kidneys start functioning. People will expel kidney stones painlessly, and a lot of different healing happens. So it's for me, I tried various things and they're all nice, but this one is so next level that I just had to jump into being a part of it.
It's like a vortex.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what it is. There's a website, EE System for the inventor, but to find centers that are all over the world now, you can go to unifiedhealing.com. And unified is a Y instead of an IE in the word unified.
Mhm. And we'll put all that in the show notes.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So I'm very interested in so you have plans now for this energy system that you're doing to help others, maybe even have an enlightenment when they're inside this type of vortex that you're providing. Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. Many people, I mean, I wouldn't say over half, but there are still many people who will see visions or
Mm,
feel a confirmation about
mhm,
something in their life. So yes, it brings that wider perspective. Sometimes in life we just get a little too focused on the concerns right here, and we forget that there's this big flow of life carrying us, and this
mhm,
system helps feel that, and then that can create all kinds of shifts.
mhm. Yes, and for people who are doing a meditative practice and are having some of these experiences, and expansiveness is one of the biggest things. I mean, self-inquiry, when you start inquiring about your life and all those types of things, it's best to try and find somebody who has already been through it, not to hold your hand, but just to guide you and let you know that, yes, this is normal. This is what happens when you start coming into these types of enlightenments. Because when you go to a workshop and you spend time meditating that you haven't and you learn how to, your brain actually changes during those times. And so it's really good, especially if you get somebody else's name at the workshop, that you can talk to and ask if they're going through the same thing, because I think it's really healthy to have a buddy when these types of changes are happening, because they can happen rather quickly and you need time to just settle with it and not fight against it, but just let what's happening just happen. And because on the other side, I always say on the other side of the curtain is a future brighter than you can ever imagine. I actually have a quote that's not exactly like that. But you're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Symatrex. And today I'm speaking with Lisa Carrillo, and let the audience know how they may reach out to you.
Sure. My website is www.experiencingthetrueself.com. You can message me there. I also have a couple books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. The most recent one is An Unprincipled Life, Living from the Unknown. And the earlier one is Living Awake, 20 Techniques to End I Got It, I Lost It. And I also have a YouTube channel where I teach self-inquiry, and that is inquiry into self. And that's with the E, inquiry with an E.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's quite a process for sure when you start that inquiring
Yes.
about yourself, right? Do you feel that you've been called to your journey, crafted it, or a bit of both?
It kind of depends upon who the you is.
Yes. Do you? Yeah.
Because this life,
Wonderful.
right,
Yeah.
life flowing through me, it's crafting everything. It is what I am, and it is this immense harmony and love. And at the soul level, actually, this immenseness seems to split into souls. At the
Mhm.
soul level, I can remember planning this life, so I definitely chose to experience
Okay.
it. Yeah, but if I just settle into my body only, then of course from there it feels like there's this wonderful big thing carrying me.
Mm. So very interesting. You said that you do remember choosing this life.
Yes.
And so for our listening audience, this may be the first time that they've heard that. And so was there anything special that you needed to do in order to remember? Or did it come hand in hand with your meditation experience and then recovering, or not recovering from it, but
It
settling into it? Settling
happened
into it.
several years later. My best friend had died, and I'd already been in ongoing deepening practices. But
Mhm,
after he died, I walked into a museum where there were one artist's paintings of all these balls of light, and all of a sudden I remembered a past life of being in that place
mhm,
that it was sort of depicting. And after that, I could go into meditative states with an intention, and memories would start to come. And so in that case, I wanted to remember more about planning this life. And so I sat in that meditation, and then the memory came back of jumping into this life. He had asked, what was it like to be an atheist? And I said, oh, don't try to remember that. It's no fun. And then he teased back, that you don't think I could have fun being an atheist? And then he jumped into this life to prove he could have
mm,
fun being an atheist. And I went to another room and started planning this life. And I picked together all the elements that I thought was most interesting. And then I jumped into my life.
mm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You know
I,
that, yeah.
I felt very competent. Like I had planned thousands of lives before. I knew how to make a life that I would find interesting, that would have enough excitement and creativity in it. And I chose the challenges that I wanted to have.
Hmm. What do you say then to people who say, this is it, when I'm dead, I'm gone, and there's nothing after this? What would you say to them?
That's what that friend said. And I just smile. There's no
Yeah.
need to think otherwise. That could be part of the design of this life, to think that this is it, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, clearly I remember that that's not the case, but I don't have any argument with anybody having
No.
that position.
Yeah. Yeah, because everybody is creating their own self. I mean, they don't even realize, and I think that some people don't realize that they've created themselves, but that's what we've done. And by hook or by crook, though, because, we're guided all the way through our lives by people. And our reaction from people, the way we were raised, the schools that we attended, the people that were in our lives and taught us or didn't teach us. And I think that, to stop all that chatter and to be centered and feel yourself, feel your body, see where you're connected, and make a different decision. And the biggest thing that you've talked about is your compassion and the loving kindness to others. I find that compassion and loving kindness will change your life, because it will change you. Because if you're at the level of loving kindness, you are recognizing what other people need in their life. And that's why you are kind and compassionate. And you had a wonderful story to tell us about that. What extraordinary discovery have you found in your life?
You know, it is amazing. We can't do anything wrong.
We can't?
We can't do anything wrong.
Yay!
Yes. Yes. One of the visions I had was, and this isn't, I don't think, a literal truth, but it kind of is the right thematically. Infinite being picked together a recipe of these particular skills and threw it into the air as a soul and said, I wonder what this one will do. So it's curious. We can do nothing but be what we were crafted to be. And we aren't doing anything wrong. We're just showing what this recipe does. And sometimes this recipe gets to be one who receives love. And sometimes this recipe gets to be one who gives love. And all those parts are perfect.
Yes. All those parts are perfect. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Beautiful. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about or share with the audience that I haven't asked you?
Well, I'd like to mention that I think it's really helpful to have two practices. One is the meditative practice that helps us remember this infinite being that we are. And then the other is an inquiry practice that helps kind of break apart the structure we try to force ourselves into. And that inquiry process is one of the things I highlight in both my books. But there's lots of other people who will give you that same thing. And I found to have both is really helpful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that when you begin these practices, you don't realize how tightly wound up you are until these types of practices help to unwind you and just help you resonate in yourself and the trueness of yourself. And one of the things that I heard when I was growing up, and you probably heard the same thing, and I never really could get it figured out. They say the longest journey that you'll ever take is from your brain to your heart. And, I mean, intellectually, you can, draw conclusions around that. But until you really feel in your heart and the expansiveness and the love that you have, and when you're practicing kindness and compassion to other people, you'll feel that your heart does expand. And you'll get out of your brain and get into your heart more when you're talking and being with other people. And especially the ones that need you the most are the ones that are having the hardest time. And recognizing that. And another thing to do, I find, is bless people, because a lot of people need to be blessed. And we don't know how far reaching our blessings and our kindness is that we give to people.
Oh, that's so true. There's such a rich emanation that's constantly going from us to other people, and we don't even realize to the extent that we're affecting other people. It's definitely changed my values the more I've sat with this, because it used to be when my car would break down or something breaks in my house and I have to call somebody and get some help and get quotes or whatever. I used to be just frustrated at, this was not in my plan. But clearly, the universe wants me interacting with lots of people. And I feel like it's the universe just handing me an invitation to another party. Here you go. I want you to have a party with this contractor. Here you go. I want you to have a party with this mechanic. It's the universe wanting that constant engagement with other people as an opportunity to share love or be loved.
Beautiful. Just wonderful, Lisa. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I certainly look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you, Rhonda. I really appreciate the spacious lovingness that just emanates off of you. You
Oh,
clearly have cultivated that very well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Theme song for Courting Your Soul is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by John Park Wheeler.